And so fast forward a couple years to 1971 when Carl decides to go to New York to become, not to run for a third term, go to New York to become an anchor at WNBC. And that left a void in the power structure. And in an effort to bring blacks back into the Democratic Party fold, I believe initially that you were made one of the three chairmen of the party, with Hugh Corrigan and Tony Garofoli, perhaps.
That's right. After Carl left, he had told me that I should continue negotiating with them. He had done some negotiating with the party, but they couldn't come to an agreement. And so I continued having meetings with Garofoli and with Judge
Bartunek or Judge Corrigan.
Yeah, and Bartunek and Corrigan too. So finally, we struck an agreement. They agreed with me that they would have an office holder, an auditor or a clerk or something. At that time, no blacks held any position of importance on any county office. You know, we had county auditor, county clerk, and all those offices, including the prosecutor's office. No black was elected to anything. And so they agreed that they would have someone who was going to resign early, appoint a black to it, so that black would be in office, and the party could easily try to promote them. That 1/3 of the jobs in the county would go to blacks, and that we'd get an appointment on the election board. We had a whole list of things that I negotiated, and based on that, and that they would set up a triumvirate. There would be 3-party chairmen, and I'd be the first black chairman of the party, serving with Garofoli and Hugh Corrigan. So we did set that up. And unfortunately, the other things never came through. And but that was the basis on which we went back took blacks back into the Democratic Party.
And soon thereafter, you decided that the press of business in Washington prevented or reasoned you stepped aside as chairman, and I believe George filled that role.
Yeah, what happened?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I realized, Brent, that I could not really handle things back here with doing my job in Washington, but that it was important to the community to see that I had done that and to see me in that position. And so I went to George Forbes and asked George if he would take that spot as the third party in the triumvirate, and he agreed to do so. And that's when George started acquiring political power.
There were periods in the early 70s, though, when, I'm going to be a little delicate here, that all was not well for a period within black political leadership at the time. There were significant, serious disagreements. Am I overstating that?
Well, let's say there were disagreements on certain issues in terms of me, Arnold, and George. I'll cite one incident. For instance, Pinckney was opposed to busing. I was in favor of busing, which the United States Supreme Court utilized as one of the tools to be able to desegregate the schools. But one of the things that we had at that time was W.O. Walker, the editor of the Post. Every Saturday morning, George Forbes, Arnold Pinckney, and I would meet in W.O. Walker's offices. The purpose of it was that behind closed doors, we could argue and fight with each other about any kind of issue that was related to the black community. But then when we left his office, we were united. And that's what we did do. And if like a school issue like that, when Arnold and I differed, that was a place for us to talk it out and discuss it and so forth, so that the black community would not see any a disagreement between the three of us in leadership roles.
Two students from Laurel School, I'm going to probably butcher these names, Caitlin Ballesteros and Joan Kohler, have a question. They'd like you to explain to them why it took so long. Mike White was elected mayor in 1989. There was a 20-year vacuum in terms of an African-American being elected mayor of Cleveland. Do you have any explanation as to why that happened? I mean, you had Perk, Kucinich, and then Voinovich.
Sure. Yeah, well, we tried. After Carl left in 71, he had tried to get Arnold Pinckney. He had chosen Arnold to succeed him. And Arnold ran in 71. But he could not get elected as Carl had done. He lost. And then he came back, I think, Brent, in 75 and ran again. And he ran twice. And each time he lost. So then between 75 and what year did Mike get?
89.
89. I'm not sure that we had any candidate of real.
The Voinovich era, no one was.
That's right.
For 10 years, George Voinovich, no one of.
That's right.
There was never a close election.
But that's when George sort of rose to the.
Well, George became council president in 73 and began his stint as the longest serving council president and probably the most powerful council president.
He was that, and Voinovich tended really to turn the reins of the city over to George Forbes, really.
That's been suggested.
That's right. That was delicate.
Yeah, you were. Then we're getting near the period where we're going to wrap this up here, but throughout the 70s, you continued to enjoy some successes in the Congress and picked up seniority. You were never seriously challenged back home. And when was the House Select Committee? Was it 78 or 80?
1976.
76. Uh-huh. And that's when you had when you became, your moment in the sun nationally. That was your coming out party on the national stage. Is that fair way to put it? Because that was a major appointment. Who decided to name you to head that committee?
Okay, that would have been Speaker Tip O'Neill. Okay. But earlier on, the first move was when Tip came to me and asked me to go on the ethics committee. And I wound up being chairman of the ethics committee. And this was right around the time that they had the Abscam cases. If you remember that on national television, you saw the picture of members of Congress with some FBI agents who were posing as sheikhs. And this member of Congress was taking money and just stuffing it into his pockets. And those were the Abscam cases. And I wasn't chairman when they first started those cases, but I became chairman. I handled the last of those cases. And then it was after that when they formed the Assassinations Committee, and Tip appointed me to that committee. And it already had, he appointed someone else as chairman, but that fellow was leaving Congress. So between 1976 and January 77, he didn't do anything. And then they appointed Henry Gonzalez of Texas. And Henry Gonzalez got in a big fight with the counsel for the committee, and he resigned. And that's when Tip called me, and he said, "Lou, I want you to become chairman of the Assassinations Committee." And then so I took it, and then after I did that, he asked me to go on the Iran-Contra panel. He also appointed me as one of those to go to the little island to investigate the invasion of Grenada. Yeah, I did that, and let's see. Oh, and then they appointed me to the House Intelligence Committee, and then later I became chairman of it.